Hello and welcome. This is Regressing with the King's Power. As we start with Chapter 1, we see the sky and a landscape of what looks like broken swords stuck in the ground. Then a monster goes to attack a man, but he has a knife that pierces the monster's throat. It struggled a bit, but then the monster died and fell to the ground. The man says that he could finally use his own power to kill a monster. Suddenly, someone calls to him and we see a ton of monsters dead and alive while other people are on their monster corpses. They tell the man to do his job since he is a porter which collects the drops of the monsters. They question if he sees the monster corpses and ask why they even hired someone like him if he's just going to fool around. The man apologizes, but the people call him useless. We get some dialogue about how the world changed after the Abyss was discovered. The Abyss is another dimension where monsters come from. After the Abyss was discovered, people awakened powers, and with those powers they defeated monsters and started to explore the Abyss. Because of that, people no longer cared about who you were besides your awakening rank. If you had a high awakening rank, you could live a good life. We switch back to the man and he says that he's not one of them. He's just a porter who carries around monster drops. He's unawakened and he has never seen a status window in his life. He is 35 years old, but without an awaken, he will never be able to live a life like the other awakened people do. The man calls out to the other people that he got all the monster drops from this side. He then turns around to see all the awakened people dead on the floor. He doesn't understand how they died, but suddenly a monster talks to him and says that he's the only one left. He looks at the monster with shock since it's a SS rank monster. The man tries to attack the monster, but with just a wave of the monster's arm, the man's arm goes flying off. He drops to the ground, crying in pain, and he questions what kind of monster is it, but before he could say that, the monster attacks him with purple lightning. He asks himself if this is how he dies. His parents passed away in a car accident, he's been bullied in school, and he lived being ignored since he wasn't an awakened. His life is going to end after only carrying cargo. And he calls himself a loser and says only if he had an awakening. Suddenly, something says that all the conditions to awaken has been met. The man then sees a stairway up to a white glowing being. He looks around with confusion since everything is frozen around him and he can't even see his own body. He also sees that the monster that was just about to kill him has been frozen. The being questions why the man is focusing on the monster stopping. He then turns around and questions who the being is. The being says that some people call him king, but he shouldn't worry about that. He tells the man that he'll give him an authority. He questions what's going on and doesn't understand the situation he's in. The so-called king tells him that it isn't good to be disrespectful. The king just admires the man's will and tenacity, so he came to choose him. He tells the man that it will be good to know that this kind of miracle won't happen again. A bright light flashes and the man is still confused about what's going on. The king tells him to wait patiently because soon his time will come and they'll meet again. A monster comes out of nowhere, but the king calls it his key. He slams the monster down to the man and a flash happens again. Some muttering is going on and the man hears it and questions on if it's a voice. Someone ends up saying that he's sleeping and that he's also ignoring them. They will just have to wake him up, and then the man opens his eyes slowly but gets smacked in the face while they say good morning to him. They ask if he's awake now and the guy tells him that he only listens when he's getting a beating. The man calls him Bae Hyuksu, but he also questions how he's there since he was the one that bullied him back in high school. We finally get a name for the man, which is Taehyun. They ask why he isn't responding, but Taehyun is not focused on that. He thought he was in the abyss just a minute ago, and then he remembers the authority. He looks over to see a status window, but he is a bit confused since his age shows that he's 19 and he says that it's been 16 years. Taehyun starts to laugh, but the guys around him starts to question what's wrong with him and they think he's gone crazy. They threaten to give him a thrashing, but Taehyun then throws a punch at Hyuksu, which sends him flying backwards. He smiles while the others call for Hyuksu, and Taehyun is happy since he is now awakened. Chapter 2 starts off with Taehyun wiping off the tears from his face. The other two bullies come running at Taehyun with their powers being used. They question if he's gone mad and then calls him a nobody, but Taehyun dodges one of their attacks and then uppercuts the other bully in the jaw. He turns around and then kicks the other bully in the stomach. Taehyun did everything he could for 35 years to try to awaken, and he knows about a lot of different skills and monsters, so there was no way that he would lose to some bullies now. The two bullies come rushing back at Taehyun, but he quickly takes care of them. He smiles and says that he will have to redo physical training. Then Hyuksu says that it's BS that Taehyun isn't awakened. Hyuksu uses his power called Stone Skin, which is a C rank power. He then throws a punch that's covered in rocks at Taehyun, but he dodges. He then comes jumping into the air and tries to do a slam attack on Taehyun. He dodges that attack as well and comes behind Hyuksu, but he has a fast reaction time and blocks the punch with his stone face. Hyuksu asks what he's doing and Taehyun is confused since he hurt his own hand from the attack. While thinking that, he gets punched, which he does block, but it still gets him sent flying. He's now on the floor with blood dripping from his head and mouth. Hyuksu comes walking to him and tells him that he should have known his limits and questions if his senses are coming back to him. He calls him lowly for being unawakened and questions what he's gonna do and if he's just going to keep running or maybe struggle around. We get some dialogue about how all awakened people possess a skill and a rank. It starts from F, which is a normal human, to S, which is almost a monster. Those awakened people should have their physical and skills rise exponentially. Taehyun possesses an F rank skill called Predation. He's never heard of a skill like that one before, and it's the worst rank. He knows that there shouldn't be a way to win, but he gets up with this aura around him and he says that he doesn't think he's going to lose. A powerful aura comes pushing out of him and Hyuksu is confused on what's going on. He says that there's no way he awakened and calls him lowly. Taehyun questions if this power is predation since he could feel the magic move from his will. Hyuksu says that he doesn't get what's happening, but he'll just need to kill the caster of that magic. He comes rushing towards Taehyun with a full body of armor, but Taehyun puts his hand out which starts to activate predation, and it removes all of the stones covering Hyuksu's body. We get a view from the classroom window and see a tornado-looking power from the roof that Hyuksu and Taehyun are on. Hyuksu is lying down on the ground and Taehyun gets a pop-up saying that predation was completed. His rank went up to an E and he has acquired a new skill called Stone Skin. Chapter 3 starts and we switch over to the school clinic to see Taehyun. The nurse is shocked to see him with 3 kids that are beaten up on his back. Taehyun says hello to the nurse, but she is worried and concerned. After the fight was over, Taehyun moved all 3 bullies to the nurse's clinic, and the nurse started to use her healing abilities, and she also healed Taehyun's wounds. He ended up lying to her and told her that they all rode down the stairs, and he managed to convince the nurse of the lie. He's been fully treated, now and awakened, and he got his revenge on Hyuksu. His problem now is predation, Since his rank changed after a single fight, he is in shock since he trained his entire life but didn't get an awakening. Predation might be an F rank, but the power does exceed C ranks and it could steal the opponent's abilities. He starts to question why the king gave him this power and why he regressed. He has so many more questions, but right now he needs to find out more about predation. He is now standing in front of his house and he says that it's been a while since he's been here. After his parents passed away, he ended up staying with his uncle. He walks into the house and says that his uncle will be back later and he thinks of searching up something similar to his skill. Taehyun then sees 3 thugs in his house with a kid on the floor that has money. The kid's name is Hwa Jae-young and he's confused on why Taehyun is there. Taehyun is also wondering why Jae-won isn't at school. He sees the money on the floor and remembers that before he regressed, Jae-young wanted to hang with the bullies. He also stole money from the house and caused a big fuss. The thug then questions who Taehyun is, but he didn't think it would be today. They wondered who Taehyun was, but he's just Jae-young's cousin. The leader thug tells Taehyun to pass by and let them take what they want or he'll get beaten up. The guy calls Taehyun unawakened while he puts his hand on his head. Taehyun smiles and says that this is perfect since he wanted to test something. The thug says what just before getting punched in the face by Taehyun. The other thugs look shocked, including Jae-young. Taehyun then tries to use predation on the thug, but it doesn't work. The thug looks up at Jae-hyun with worry and confusion. Taehyun is also confused on why predation didn't work, and then he gets punched in the face from the thug on the floor. All of them start rushing at Taehyun with their powers being used. They bind, poison, and bleed him. The attack seems to land on him, and they say that he should have known his place as someone who isn't an awakened. They look into the fog of poison to see Taehyun standing. The predation detected skills being used and gained a resistance towards the unknown power. Taehyun says that it didn't work, but then neutralized skills when it wants to. He doesn't know what's going on, but then he attacks the main thug with stone skin. He says that predation is strong with a smile on his face as he flattens the thug into the ground. We start with chapter 4 and Taehyun says that he learned 2 things. We see the status window, which is only available for the awakened. We see Taehyun's stats and skills that he has. The status window details out the information on the awakened, but not all information is displayed. He says that until now he wasn't lacking in mana, but predation didn't activate. That means something is causing it not to activate, which isn't showing up on the status window. Also, the passive effect from predation is to resist and neutralize skills related to abnormal conditions. This also wasn't shown on the status window or explained. He thinks that he could gradually confirm his speculation. He then switches his attention to Jae-young since he's on the floor bowing to him. Jae-young says that he's reflecting on his actions since he saw a different side of Taehyun. He's asking for forgiveness and he'll do whatever he tells him to do. Taehyun knew Jae-young was a fox back then, but he didn't know it was like this. He thinks that this matter isn't an urgent one, but something else is. He tells Jae-young that he'll forgive him, but he'll have to come with him to get something done. We switch over to a place that is restricted and there are 3 people in this area and they are looking at a gate break. A gate break is where monsters from the abyss opens up a path. The man with the glasses says that it's been 10 years since the gate break happened. The gate was sudden and a lot of monsters are pouring out. The girl with the long hair says that the gate is moments away from a disaster. The girl with the short hair asked if they should evacuate the surrounding areas. The man says that there was no need for that since his B rank barrier skill is on their side. The gate is also a C rank, so that means only C rank monsters will come out. We start to see the monsters pushing and cracking the barrier. The man says that even in a case where the crisis is unexpected, but he suddenly gets cut off since the barrier breaks. The man turns around and kicks the head off of the monsters and says that he is a B rank and they could handle it. We switch back to see Jae-young running with Taehyun. Jae-young asked if it should be okay since the control personnel are already there. He says that it's a good thing, but Taehyun says that the gate's initial mana was a C rank and the people there are B rank, so there shouldn't be a problem. Jae-young says yes since that's what he was saying. Taehyun says that's only if it's an actual C rank gate. We switch back to the gate to see monsters on the ground, and the man thinks that it's strange since the monsters broke through his barrier. He then realizes that the mana is probably over a B rank, and one of the girls calls out to the man and says something is inside the gate. Then a huge monster breaks through the barrier from its scream. The man questions what that monster is. The whole barrier is broken and the monster is an A rank ogre. The man says that it wasn't a C rank but rather an A rank gate. Suddenly, an explosion happens in front of the man which most likely killed him. We switch back to Jae-young and Taehyun, and Jae-young questions on what if Taehyun is correct. He then calls it ridiculous and questions on how he even knows this. Taehyun thinks to himself that he's already been through it. Jae-young says that they haven't even seen monsters, let alone heard an issue to evacuate. Taehyun says that it's intuition, but Jae-young says that he's lying and questions on if Taehyun is trying to fool him. Then they see and hear a bunch of people running from the monsters. They scream out to run since it's a gate break. People are screaming for help and Jae-young's face is dropping with shock. Taehyun asked if Jae-young remembers what he told him to do. Jae-young questions what about him, but he turns around and says that he'll get rid of these monsters and be right behind him. We switch over to the man in a high-up view and he says that the situation escalated quickly and the gate was thought to be a C rank turned out to be an A rank gate. There is no reinforcements since other gates are being handled. The situation calls for an A rank awakened to help. The man tells someone behind him that he's their only hope. His name is An Hyunsu, Blade of Lunacy. He is crying and he hopes that everyone can hang on. We start chapter 5 with Taehyun killing the monsters and then using predation on them. He expects the reason behind predation not working is fatigue. If his fatigue is past 70%, predation won't activate. Most skills are usually based on mana, but that isn't the only thing to worry about. Fatigue is the other factor into everything. It does increase if you use a skill or do some physical activities, and the higher that gets, the more powerful you become. He thinks that it's unfortunate that there are many things to consider. This actually might be his first time considering all these things because he wasn't awakened before, so he never really had to worry about, oh, I need mana, or oh, my fatigue is this low so I can't use a skill, you know? He found out that he could absorb the monsters to recover mana. He then gets a pop-up saying that he was successful in recovering his mana due to predation. He smiles and says that it's also great for growing. We see that his rank went up to D and both skills went up to D rank as well. He thinks that this way of growing could make him stronger than an SS rank and become the first SSS rank. He says that he is done and then questions himself if he should go back to Jae-young. He then hears something and turns around to see Hyunsu fighting the ogre. Hyunsu calls the monster dirty and says he'll pay it back for all the people it killed. He'll be the one to judge this monster. The monster goes for the attack, but Hyunsu also attacks the monster, which cuts the hand of the ogre. Taehyun is shocked since he easily defeated the monster. He thinks that this is the same person who defeated it before he regressed. He says that Hyunso is just as strong as he's heard. Hyunso says that the monster was idiotic and it died by his sword of justice. Taehyun says that he's also as stupid as he's heard. He then questions why he's even here since he was supposed to be on the other side of the city. Hyunsu prays for the people who lost their lives, and suddenly Predation senses a skill and Hyunsu gets stabbed in the chest. Hyunsu coughs up blood and is confused. The man behind him says that he finally caught him. We switch to see Jae-young next to the school nurse. He questions if this is really okay and then remembers what Taehyun said to him about her dying if she goes out. He told Jae-young to use his sleep skill to keep her inside in a safe place. He then questions how he knows all these things and comes up with him having a future sight skill. He thinks that it's super cool and crazy. We switch back to Taehyun and he thought that nothing was going to go wrong, but it has. Hyunsu asks the man who stabbed him to tell him his identity. The man is surprised since Hyunsu is alive even after getting stabbed in a vital spot. He says that A ranks are different after all and hunting him will be fun. The man is a B rank villain named Han Sango and his ability is stealth. They call the awakened people who commit crimes villains, and this one is a maniac. He went around killing people for the fun of it when a gate breaks. Taehyun is sure they've never met before he regressed. He questions if the future changed because of him. Hyunsu calls him a villain and he'll punish him with his own hands. He starts to use his light sword, but suddenly the ogre makes everything shake and it starts to regenerate its torn off limb. Hyunsu is confused, but the villain says that it's expected since it's an A rank monster. The ogre throws a punch at the ground which pushes them back. Sango lands in front of Taehyun and says he'll leave the ogre to Hyunsu. He turns to see Taehyun and says that it's good since he has more prey. He starts to rush towards Taehyun with a worried face and tells him to die. Thank you all for watching part 1 of Regressing with the King's Power, and hopefully I didn't butcher the names too much, but if I did, I do apologize. I am trying my best. But without further ado, I hope you guys have a good one and have a good day.